Welcome, everyone, to Anita Talks History and Genealogy. And this is at We Know Better 622. Um, please tune in. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. We're very open to positive comments, to constructive comments. But I want to do a disclaimer and state that what I am speaking on is the research that I've done over 30 years. It's more than 30 years, but I give it 30. And what I have been able to, even before DNA, to prove about my ancestors who were Revolutionary War ancestors, who were native people or indigenous people to these lands. Some of my ancestors, very few of my ancestors came here from Africa. I have one great great grandmother on my mother's grandfather's side who was brought here in 1830 at the age of 12 from Guinea. Do you know that it was illegal in 1830 for African slaves to be sold here in the United States? So she was taken along with other children from her village to Bermuda to be seasoned before being brought back here and sold as a Caribbean slave. So that this is, this is my history. This is what I'm sharing. I share about my Mohawk ancestors. I share about my Algonquin ancestors, my Siouan ancestors. I speak on, even on those Europeans who I am blood connected to. And they came into my lines through various means. But today I want to talk about my paternal grandfather and his lines. His name, Grandpa Baxter. We called him Grandpa Baxter, Charles Wesley Baxter. And the reason is that when my brother went to do our paternal DNA test, it came back 100% Native American from Colombia, South America. And my grandfather and his people, as far as we knew, were slaves in South Carolina, not too far from Columbia, South Carolina, by the way. So they were slaves. And we did not, my brother actually took an African ancestry test, to see what parts of Africa our ancestors came from. And it came back 100% Native American. He gets a certificate of Indigenous ancestry. And in fact, when I took my maternal line DNA test with African ancestry, they traced those lines back to Spain. So they gave me a certificate of 100% European because Spain. But they did not clarify that the Moors were in Spain, that Spain, which was populated by Africans who came over from North Africa, over the Iberian Peninsula, into what is now Spain. It probably, I don't know what they called it back there, 20, 30,000, maybe 40 or 50,000 years ago, when my female ancestors went over the Iberian Peninsula into what is now Europe. So this is not something they were telling us. they were calling us back in the day colored. Oh, no, first we were mulatto. Um, then on our birth certificates, me and my siblings, and you know, some of some others of us, they called us colored. Then they called us, they go back and that those folks who control all of that data, like the census and all that stuff and the birth certificates and Department of Vital Statistics, they changed shit. They changed, where they were calling us colored to us being Negro, you know. So they are controlling the vital statistics and what it looks like and who is on the census and how you are represented on the census. So the reason I'm saying that is because of the 7 books that I've written are basically about my indigenous heritage. And the reason I did that was because they took so much time and effort to bury the truth about who we are. They just wanted us to be slaves from Africa, to have no identity, to have no roots. And they went to great lengths to cover up our identities. And I felt it was important to go to as great a length to uncover what they had covered up. So I have a DNA cousin. Her name is Juanita Mamiya. And sometime around 1540, she was mummified. I mean, they're saying that, oh, Mamiya Juanita, she was, they sacrificed her. They always want to say that about the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Incas. Oh, they sacrificed their children. How did she, as they threw her in a volcano or whatever they're trying to say they did, how is she a mummy? How is she not incinerated? This young child is a mummy. Her name is Mamiya Juanita. And if you Google her, they will show you the child. And my DNA connects to hers. And she was in, was it Peru or somewhere there? She was an Inca child. And so that's another, you know, um, that was another DNA test I took that showed those relationships. Um, and to, to clarify, when we're speaking or when I'm speaking about my research and to me is like my grandfather was a dark skinned person, but his DNA would show that his people were from Colombia, South America. That's the paternal DNA. Do you know he had a mother, right? So if he's showing up darker or lighter or whatever, look at the mother, look at the father. There's 2 parents, and stop freaking out and say, oh, you're trying to say that indigenous people were dark skinned people. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm going to show you a picture of my grandfather, what he looked like. But he had a mother and a father. And his paternal DNA came from Colombia, South America. Okay? And according to my brother, the research that he has done, they did a out of Africa theory of this line, which is the DNA of my paternal grandfather, traced him out of the Middle East. He went through, I think they went through India, into Asia. And then they went, uh, I believe, like they said, oh, it's 40,000 or so years ago. I believe they were with those people who are in Australia, the Aborigines, that this was a group that may have been with them and just continued on because they said they went through Asia. So we have DNA in Asia, then Melanesia. So all of that area is around where the Aborigines were in Australia. And then this person who is my DNA ancestor came into the Americas and is indigenous. They said that this person is indigenous to America, or maybe when they say indigenous, they mean one of the first humans to settle in the Americas. Do not come at me with some ignorant comments about that. I'm telling you what I researched, what I read, and what we have learned about our ancestors. Do your own research on your own ancestors and stop just waiting for someone to say something and then come out with an ignorant remark with nothing to back it up except your um, you know some rhetoric you've heard and some of that divide and conquer BS that's going on with the Europeans. In the first place, um, they don't want us to get along. And everything, not all of them, okay? Let me put that disclaimer. Everything uh, about those folks who are racist has to do with race and their fear of being othered, like they have othered us. They don't want to be othered. They don't, they cannot come in and argue because their facts don't stand up. So they will use one of us who are ignorant to argue on their behalf. So when you're coming in and someone is sharing information that they've well documented, and you want to just say something stupid like, "Oh, they weren't dark skinned, or they weren't light skinned, or they weren't," that's ignorant. Native people were not racist. They did not look at someone and say, "Oh, you're light skinned," or "you're this, that, or the other." That was introduced to us by colonizers. So let's stop pushing forward that narrative, you know, um, and remember who we are. We are the people of this land. We honor the land. We honor our ancestors. We honor the truth, you know, and so let's share our truths. It doesn't mean that if your truth is different than mine, it doesn't mean that you're wrong and I'm right, or I'm right and you're wrong. It just means this is what I found. So this is what I found about my darling ancestor, my beloved grandfather, Charles Wesley Baxter, and something that he didn't even know because they moved them around. So if they were in Colombia, South America, how did they become slaves in Orangeburg, South Carolina? They were moved around. And another thing is they may have moved themselves around. They may have been Caribbean Indians because we have DNA relatives in the Caribbean that are Caribbean Indians. So maybe he's one of those, his ancestors were those Caribbean Indians who were enslaved when Columbus um, came and started enslaving and um, killing off the native people. Let me tell you something about African, or our DNA. all natives did not die from disease. A lot of them did from the European diseases, but there were enough of us who had that genetic code that did not die from it. And they enslaved us, the ones that, that didn't die. They enslaved us. Um, and or our ancestors rather, moved them around, bred them, and and there's a Perry whose DNA has been found in South Carolina, and according to my brother, we are connected to that DNA. Some of the oldest DNA, um, they're calling him Adam or something, but I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to get too far into genetic coding and all that, or who's what we can, what diseases we can or cannot fight. But the fact is, we're still here. Not just we, but most of there are many descendants of Native Americans that are still here. And there's a reason that they were not able to kill us off with disease, and that we were able to survive slavery. And we need to honor that. We need to honor our ancestors. And um, I'm going to share more about my grandfather's lines further down the road, but I just wanted to honor him, Charles Wesley Baxter, um, and the Baxters, the Boyds, the Bonapartes, the Perrys, our South Carolina connections. Um, they weren't all Gullah Geechee, and I honor the Gullah Geechee. My great great grandmother who was brought here from Africa at the age of 12, as I mentioned earlier, was actually a part of the Gullah Geechee community on Hilton Head Island. So I'm not dishonoring them. I'm just saying that this was a different line who were slaves in South Carolina, and I want to bring that up, to share that, to talk about, to get us conversing about the truth. Because Trump is, as I am speaking, trying to whitewash our history in the Smithsonian Museum, as if that's the only place we have history. We have. Um, I was taught history in my church, you know, in the Church of God in Christ. We talked about history. We have different means of communication besides just European. I'm not going to say the Smithsonian is European because they do a service. When I went to the Museum of African History in D.C., there were people from all over the world. Lots of Europeans, people from India, people from Africa, people from Asia, you name it, they were there. Every time I have been there, that museum is packed. And Trump wants to go in there and whitewash our history, not knowing that those people have already seen it. They have taken pictures and videos of it, and they are back in their lands sharing it. You can't destroy our history. I'm sorry. You just can't do it. Maybe you ought to talk about your own history. I don't mean in sound bites talking about some GENE, superior genes or whatever. I'm talking about, what is your history? You know, Stop trying to destroy other people's history and talk about your own history. Or are you afraid? DJT. So, with that, I'm going to close, and please support my channel. There's, a lot of good information that's going to be shared. Ask your questions, suggest topics, and I'm going to, we'll be back. And my Cash App is dollar sign WILLS 920, and I have um, all of my books are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and also on my website at alwillspub.com. But all this information is also posted on my YouTube channel. And I'll be with you guys soon. Take care. Have a good one. And